Well, hello, that's me again. Today is April 7th, 2025. It is Monday, and I want to start with the thing which many people will, I know there will be many people in, the discussion board saying, you don't understand anything about economy. This is the essence of the real economics. But I want to start with this, which is, of course, the stocks. So, and as you can see yourself, today's stocks, yeah, they're chaotic on the American side, but it's nothing really unusual. The markets were crashing, all declining, periodically. And what many people do not understand, if you look at it attentively, that stocks whipsawed on Monday, spending time on both sides of flat line and chaotic and all blah 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 blah, as the result of Trump's tariffs. Well, here is the issue. What many people do not understand. And if you want to read about the nature of stocks, I would suggest you to read about John Kenneth Galbraith, his famous book, which was essentially the transcript of his while giving the interview to the BBC in 1970s. For those people who do not understand who John Kenneth Galbraith is, he was one of the key people in developing the New Deal for the administration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, after, of course, this free market, so-called, turned America into the, well, how can I say it, industrial wasteland after the, 1929, the Great Depression hit. And the point is, we can debate it here until the hell freezes over if FDR's policies worked or didn't. Some of it worked, others didn't, but of course it was the World War II which saved the United States, essentially. Even the Federal Reserve Bank admits that. So, but the point is that stock market, especially today, it has nothing to do with the real economy. It is akin to the guy being a billionaire sitting on the, well, uninhabited island in the middle of nowhere and trying to buy things with his billions, not understanding, or maybe understanding after a while, that money do not buy everything. Money are derivative, essentially. It's a merely exchange instrument. What really matters is, of course, the real industrial capacity and how it is designed and how it is really integrated in the, well, is primarily domestic economy. So in this case, anybody who says that Trump's tariffs, do not work, maybe, I don't know. That is why you're not getting any particular answer from me, because I am former military. I judge my life in general in the probabilistic terms, and whenever people say yes, no, yeah, it's Boolean, but you know what, I prefer probability. It's like the electron, we're flying around the nucleus, which you never know its position or whatever it is there. So the same here. We have to always look at the probabilistic nature of things. And I can tell you one thing. I wrote it in my blog a few years back when suddenly they removed, I believe it was General Electric no less, the company which produces anything still, anything between, ranging from the MRI machines to the outstanding jet engines for commercial aircraft. So, and they substituted this financialized, obviously you get those MBAs, they kill things, they destroy things, but it still produce things. Well, they substituted in Dow Industrial with what? With Walgreens, my friends. They substituted it as one of the most important American companies with Walgreens, which is nothing more than retail chain. And so when you look at this and people say, oh God, stocks go this way or that way, doesn't matter. Anybody believes that Tesla or capitalization of Apple is $1 trillion? Only morons believe that. And as a result today, so of the tariffs, yes, stocks go up and down. But the only thing which will be actually really matters, the only thing are the retail prices for the people, of the average people, and other types of the financial instruments, for example, which if you consider inflation, nobody wants to have having their savings being eaten by inflation. That's what really matters. And of course, the fact that you have to go into the grocery store and you have to buy the meat and vegetables and what have you, because these are tangibles. Only tangibles matter. And for those people who think that somehow those stocks play some role, no, they are pure speculation. Always was. And that is why how we got into this bubble, and that's how we got, well, the national debt is a completely different story. But stocks don't matter, really. They have been detached from the reality and economic reality on the ground for a long time now. So if the stock market crashes tomorrow, yeah, there are some so-called investors. They are not investors, they are speculators. They, let's call things their, proper names, and they will be hurt. But you know what, for example, the small people, well, if you want to invest your money, so-called invest, or speculate your money in some stock market, good luck. I'm not in the position of the financial advisor. So this is what we have. Now, the thing which really kind of gets me into going, so to speak, is this. So we have yesterday, we have Mr. Starmer, it's independent. Starmer to declare end of globalization. What that means? Well, first, you have to understand, if you sit in the chair and some mosquito, and some flea, if granted you don't live properly in proper sanitation, gets on you and says, oh, I'm about to declare something. This is pretty much the equivalent of that, and Starmer, together with UK, mean absolutely nothing in economic terms for the modern world. So it is akin to Chihuahua, indeed, going out to the whatever the hell we can, what are those breeds of the dogs, going to the bulldog or whatever, pit bull, and trying to tell this pit bull that, dude, you are gone, it's over for you. So the same here. It is a midget, economically midget dwarf country with the same political clout, and because they have the city of London where all those speculation money go through, Mr. Starmer decided that he can declare what is already dead. Globalization was dead for a while, and if he wants to take a look how it was dead, he was supposed to read what I wrote, 8 years ago. Simple as that. But you know what? Ambition, egos larger than cathedrals are a dangerous thing. And we already know that these idiots, like him or Macron, they constantly go around, spewing BS, and he declares that globalization is dead. It was dead for a while now. And the way it was conceived by this, well, let's be honest and let's be straight, by these DNC globalist elites, which are, of course, World Economic Forum type elites. They're not really that dumb. And so the fact that many of them are rich means absolutely nothing. For example, Mr. Gates, who is the father of the Microsoft, not really. And anybody who buys his story that he did it in the garage, well, yeah, having your mom being chair member of the board for the IBM didn't help, I guess. So yeah, he's not a very bright fellow, but they think that, yeah, they rule the world, and they think that because they have money, well, they may have whatever money they have, but as Mr. Stalin correctly stated when talking to one of the Vatican delegation during World War II, the answer was very clear. The question was very clear. How many divisions does Pope have? There you go. How many divisions do they have? They don't really, and many of those guys, they produce very little tangibles. Real tangibles are, well, they rest in peace in the Rust Belt in the United States, but Russia and China produce enormous amount of all kinds of things, and that's the only thing which matters. So, and as the result, Mr. Trump has generally correct idea. It's the execution which probably we have to wait for the real results. But again, I won't put much stock in stocks. Pardon my, play of the words. So, and that was very important. So Mr. Starmer can go around and declare whatever he wants, including the fact that United Kingdom is the greatest thing which ever existed. It doesn't change the reality. Reality is only thing which matters. And going to the reality, so we have to get to the a little bit, how to say it, into the neck of the woods. And here's the reality. Mr. Rude, good Lord, I don't know how many times they have to play around this, and there are so many panicked people that say, oh yeah, somebody says something about Russia negotiating. Guys, I don't know, it's just becoming nauseating to repeating the same thing, which, by the way, was repeated by Kremlin today again. Yeah, sure, we're all for ceasefire, unless, of course, those conditions which we put forth are met. Not bye-bye. And Russians continue to do what they do. And so suddenly this Rutte guy, who is, the chairman of the board, so to speak, and he is, of course, the general secretary of NATO, he says that, again, we do not have our own red lines because we are not part of that when he talks about negotiations, or rather consultations primarily between Russians and Americans have their own offspring for these so-called negotiations with Ukrainians. We are not part as NATO of those negotiations. They are really driven by the US together with Ukraine and the Russians. I'm glad that the US has broken the deadlock, that these talks are now ongoing. Rutte ruled out NATO itself sending peacekeepers to Ukraine. Probably it will not be NATO as such. That's not very likely. Sure, and NATO itself is the military impotent together with the constituent parts of NATO, such as France or UK. These are impotent countries. And if you take a look attentively at this conversation, which was on the C News by Charles Gave, I believe Charles Gave, he's not Charles Gave. I believe in French you have to have T in the end to be Gave. But so Charles Gave, he's a famous investor, and he's a famous financier and economist, and his political position is Eurosceptic. And he talks about this few days back that to C News that, well, the West lost. And the worst part, as he says here, is the fact that, well, the United States for the first time have been defeated because it has much worse weapons. Russians simply have better weapons, well, Russians have better operational art, better strategy, and what have you. And yes, they have been defeated for the first time because of that, since the World War II. And this is a critical point, and he explains that Europe is basically nothing. And that's what I'm trying to tell them. And as the result, if we today concentrate on the economic news, we have this, obviously, even Bild, well, yeah, this German tabloid, which is the worse than toilet paper. So they still come out, as on 2 days ago, and say that our cities and districts are bankrupt in Germany. And now Trump's tariffs obviously are going to bankrupt highly export-oriented economy in Germany even more, not to speak about the fact that those morons will probably take out bunch of the loans to finance whatever the hell they try to finance there, including Ukraine. So yeah, Germany is done. Even this tabloid cannot deny this, and these are people which, for example, employ such as the terrorist and Nazi Julian Röpke. This is the guy who supports people like that, which is of course Mr. Budanov. Mr. Budanov, oh yeah, 3-star general. What General Kirill Budanov has said, people should remain unaware of the harsh reality of the conflict of Russia today. During wartime, knowing the whole truth is not necessary, otherwise people may develop opinions, Budanov said. Some minds are not prepared to grasp the harsh reality. Let's not put them to the test. Everything should be dosed. Well, I mean, in some sense he is correct. The problem, of course, when you talk about Ukraine, and, well, Mr. Budanov is actually, fully certified terrorist, as are those people who, well, he's curators from NATO. But if we go and take a look today at, for example, losses, as you can see yourself, Russians continue to do what they can always do. They just kill whatever it goes their way, and they continue to move to the west. Shortly, I will be talking to a good friend, Colonel Daniel Davis, specifically about this. But here we are. As you can see yourself, while definitely less of, a smaller number of Ukrainian personnel being killed, it's still a huge number, essentially, because when you take a look attentively at this 1,400, for example, which are today sent to Bandera, well, it's in Ukrainian terms today is the whole brigade, essentially, because whatever will be left out of those 2,500-3,000 personnel number in brigades of the armed forces of Ukraine, well, if you are below 50%, you are not real formation. You cannot really fight. So, and as the result, if you take a look attentively at situation, some things fly in all over the place, Kryvyi Rog, Kharkov, Kyiv, and so if you take a look at Kursk map, if people want to know what is happening, you can see yourself, Russians are steadily moving into the Sumy region, Sumy Oblast, which most likely will become the part of Russian Federation eventually, and as you can see yourself now, suddenly it's on a broader front, as you can see yourself, the Kursk region practically fully liberated. And the issue here is that people say, how do you know? I spoke about this before, but let's kind of dedicate a little bit time to this. How do you know that, for example, people in Sumy region want to join Russia and wait for Russians? Well, you have GRU, well, it's now GU, I don't know why they removed their main intelligence directorate from that, of the general staff, and of course they have FSB and SVR operating there, and they do their necessary proper polls. They are real polls. They are not garbage in, garbage out, as all polling agencies in the world do, most of them anyway. But they know. They operate on the ground, undercover, and they talk to people. And they know how to select their sample. They know the reliability of the sample. And yeah, and I'm on the record, Russians are pretty good with math, real math, with real statistics. Otherwise, we would have had this situation that Russians, judging by Mr. Kavoli's math, are losing the war. But for some reason, it is 180 or 360 degrees opposite. And as the result, what do we have? So if you take a look at Chasov Yar, oh my goodness, that is a whole other story. There is an event developing in Chasov Yar. As you can see yourself, I show, this is the larger map of this. And if you take a look at Chasov Yar, there in the red line, which is about 1 kilometer wide. This is basically as wide as those jaws are open. So 1 kilometer, it's nothing really. I mean, you can shoot at people with the Kalashnikov at 350 meters if you may get lucky. But the point is, and as you can see yourself, what is in yellow, this is the main concentration of forces in the Chasov Yar, armed forces of Ukraine, and they're, well, there are all kinds of the volunteers, if you wish. Now, I'm not talking about the pocket on the right. It's a done deal. But I'm talking about this yellow circle. And if you take a look attentively, in blue, I circled, or, I circled the thing which is called stavok, which is essentially pond, And if you take a look attentively at this situation and the terrain, you can see yourself. This is where those forces of Ukraine are concentrated. They cannot, obviously, they cannot retreat over this pond. And for whatever they do, the only thing which is left for them is the field and those forests which are not very green right now. So you pretty much running in the open. And let me demonstrate to you what this pond is. And this is this pond. And as you can see yourself, it's not very large actually. There is a, well, city or town beach there, but as you can see yourself, even the forestry there. It's a low leaf trees, not very high leaf trees, and right now they obviously are naked. That means what? No matter what you try to do, no matter how you try to run, you will be seen by the UAVs. And speaking of UAVs, we'll talk about this in a second, but this is what is happening in terms of their situation there. And yeah, this grouping essentially is, well, destined to die. And Russians are doing this really well. So, and when you take a look at this, it's just how to put it, because I understand people say, oh, you repeat the same thing over and over. Yes, I will repeat it over and over. Russians will not stop until their political and military objectives are met, and they will not stop until those conditions which have been put forth will be met. If not, special military operation continues, and as I already stated many times, it's the first-hand knowledge that armed forces were told, yeah, 2025, most of it will be still combat. So, and the Russians do the combat. This is what they do. And then we have this situation. So, suddenly, French go into the business of the combat. So, guess what? They have now their defense exhibition, and it's Sophie's Special Forces Fair, held at the Sujet, I believe Suj or Sujet military camp in Gironde, where the feedback from the war in Ukraine is being felt. Okay, as you can see yourself, defense, drones, robots, armaments. Who are the stars of the Sophie Special Forces show? And French talk about this, that, well, suddenly everything what they knew about combat is really not, not up to date, to put it mildly. And here we have. So they talk about that with 4,500 people expected and some 84 delegations of foreign special forces. This 2025 edition of Sofians promises to reach records. Of course, people are interested, including the special forces. But special forces, you have to understand, they are tactical forces, unless, of course, they get in somehow and kill their military political head of whatever their enemy is. They have primarily tactical impact. Sometimes they have operational, but primarily it's a tactical force. So so they talk about on this exhibition, which is very important exhibition for European NATO. It's not necessarily the price of the innovation, but it is how long it will take for me to get it. These are people talking about in the French forces. This notion of speed of production has become more important than the price. Well, both are important, if anybody wonders, but I can tell you one thing. You can put any kind of the samples, or prototypes on the exhibition. If you don't have the industrial capacity, and France doesn't have it, neither does EU, it doesn't matter what kind of prototypes you put forth, because everything what matters in the industrial warfare is combination of the I hate sophistication, combat effectiveness of the weaponry and the industrial quantities deliveries of those weapons to the front lines, including special forces. Neither France, nor Germany, nor whatever the country in EU have those capabilities. They will have even smaller ones. Trump's, tariffs will kick in big time, but we have to wait and see. And then, of course, they talk about the French, that because, Ukraine feedback shows that we can no longer do without the drone. Well, the drones have been around, actually, since very long time ago. If you go out and take a look at already US Navy, for example, using the drones during its campaigns elsewhere, they were using those drones. They were not in large quantities, but they still existed. And Russians were using drones, for crying out loud. The Russians invented drones for themselves in 1960s. And those were all kinds of not, as we would call today, I hate to use this word, but again, non-sophisticated drones, but they were flying. So it is nothing new. It is just organic development of the weapon and recon systems, which came about about out, of age, and there you go. So that's what we have. And so, sovereign control of manufacturing chain. They talk about France, about the sovereign control of the manufacturing chain. France doesn't have it, but they talk about that if the drone has become essential, it is also to carry out surveillance and reconnaissance missions. The Delaware company, whose 150 DT-26 drones have been purchased by France to be delivered to Ukraine, is well placed to know this. This observation drone, which can go 50 kilometers, is used at the front, and Ukrainians appreciate this machine for its resistance to GPS and radio jamming, they say. Sure, and but the problem with those French guys, they don't understand, which Russians already successfully used this tactical trick, if you wish. Russians created anti-drone drones. They just fly in and kill the whatever the heck, being thrown at Russians. Doesn't mean that they have 100% effectiveness, but they have high enough effectiveness that they become the mainstay. And this is always this, the sword and the shield, the dichotomy, which very often shield wins. If you wonder how, well, look attentively at Russian air defense. It's astonishing, the effectiveness of this thing. This is shield. And if you look attentively at the number of the drones and all kinds of stuff, for example, yesterday the Russians shut down another JDAM. Evidently, some of the aircraft, maybe some of the image them, whatever the Gleason. I'm already, breaking my tongue here, talking about those all kinds of abbreviations and titles of those weapons. But these are standard targets for the modern air defense complexes of Russia, and so no matter what they do, most of it will be intercepted and will deliver very limited damage. Unless, of course, we're talking about the Ukrainian propaganda, which is the foundation of the Pentagon planning. That's how they plan the whole thing, and that's why they lose wars. That is why United States loses wars. Because on the strategic level, there are very few, if any, people from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, from the Defense Intelligence Agency, or let alone CIA, whatever the hell other things, who understand the nature of the war, the nature of the conflict. They are simply not taught to understand it. And as the result, they get into fray. Well, if you can call special military operation a fray, well, that's what happens. They lose war. They lost more than 1.2 million KIAs on the on the Ukrainian side. Russians also do not count that well all those so-called volunteers, most of who are cadre officers and soldiers, and they are being slaughtered in the industrial quantities. And combined West, including the United States, simply has no resources, no capability to fight this kind of war. And now we have this French exhibition where they run around and talk about, hey, we need drones. Well, sure, dudes, you need more than that, believe me. You, apart from drones, you need to have a very seriously prepared combat experience and highly academically proficient officer corps. How about that? Did they try this in the French army? I doubt it. And so, as a result, we have what we have today. And Mr. Trump's tariffs are creating a havoc all over the world, but the United States seems okay, Yeah, you drop some, you lose some, you win some. It's all speculation. And just follow the track record of Walgreens. I believe Walgreens is ready to declare bankruptcy. Can you imagine? They moved that thing into the one of the 33, or how many companies now, I don't know, but they moved it into the Dow Jones Industrial. This is everything you need to know about the so-called financial state of the United States and the global economy. It is all speculation. And this is what I wanted to tell you today, just giving you this seat wrap, so to speak, for you to have your brain, so to speak, peaked a little bit. And as a result, what can I say? As always, I want to express my profound gratitude to my wonderful patrons who support my work. And guys, I know many of you, who you are, and believe me, if I sometimes don't respond to emails, guys, I'm just alone. I don't have producers. I don't have anybody. I'm just the guy sitting and telling you stories, and you decide if those stories are correct. But still, I want to express my profound gratitude. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee too. So have a nice rest of your week, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.